Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 5:07, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Congressman Scott Perry joins us at 5:30. We'll talk to him about all that drama in the House today, as well as President Biden giving Liz Cheney a big presidential medal. We'll get his reaction to that. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Yeah, the 119th Congress officially beginning today, and House Speaker Mike Johnson has successfully returned to that role in this Congress, but it was not without some drama. And in fact, he got exactly the 218 votes he needed to return to the position. For more on how all of it went down, I want to bring in Congressman Andy Biggs now. He represents Arizona's 5th Congressional District. He's a member of the Judiciary and Oversight Committees, and he joins us today. Hello, Congressman. Good to have you back with us.
Thanks, Vince. Good to be with you.
Okay, so what happened today?
Well, so what happened is you had 3 people vote no on the first ballot, and then the ballot was left open.
Yeah.
And after a lengthy period of discussion and negotiations and back and forth, 2 of them came out and changed their vote and gave Johnson the victory. Because he could only lose 1 vote. And Thomas Massey of Kentucky had said he's no way in the world he's going to vote for him. He had 2 other guys vote for somebody else, and they changed their vote.
Yeah, they did. Ralph Norman and Keith Self both came through in the end for President Trump. According to Fox News, Congresswoman Nancy Mace apparently had President Trump on speakerphone with both men talking to them ahead of their decision to change their vote. I noticed, Congressman Biggs, when your name was called on the first pass, not unlike others, Chip Roy was also a similar experience. You didn't respond in terms of who you would vote for. And then when they came back to you again, you did say that you would support Speaker Mike Johnson. Was there a meaning behind that?
Yeah, so the way it works, so people understand, every ballot consists of 3 vote opportunities. Or you get an oral vote 1, oral vote 2, and then you can go down to the well and change your vote. Well, we've been trying to get the speaker to work with us on any number of issues, and we're very concerned. I am very concerned that he's not going to deliver the agenda that President Trump laid out and that all of us laid out and ran on. And so I wanted him to know and be certain that we were there watching. We're going to push him as hard as we can because we got to get the agenda through. And already I think he's way behind getting the agenda through. And so that's why I chose to remain silent on the first pass.
Did Speaker Johnson, to your knowledge, make any sort of commitments to earn the support of the Republicans who voted for him today? Yes and no. I mean, he's talking about something, making a modification of a plan that many of us in Freedom Caucus put forward, and he'd put forward something like it, and it's dealing with how you negotiate and run through the process on the reconciliation package. Because that is, just for people who are listening, there's really only 3 significant bills that are going to come forward, and 2 of them are reconciliation because those do not require the 60 votes in the Senate because you're reconciling a budget. So that has to be done very technically correct and accurate, and we wanted to make sure that basically every part of the conference was represented in getting that, because these are some complex technical issues as well as the policies that we all promised we'd perform. And he kind of went that way, is my understanding. And then there was another one dealing with rules and rules committee that were technical in nature and hard to. I mean, I could go through it, but I don't think you want me to go through the. Well, I think if I understand it correctly, whatever changes are being made are so that conservative members of the House have more say.
Yes, but also we're trying to change the process so you have bottom up. It's more bottom up instead of like the issue with the last CRs were that they were 4 corner bills. They were negotiated only with the staff
of like the speaker.
Yep.
We don't want that. We want it members, and we want it to be members. And I don't care if you got members from Main Street or the more moderate side of the conference. We just want members to be involved and have the push me pull ya that members who are representing their constituents can get into, and that's what he kind of agreed to.
That's entirely reasonable. In fact, that's the way things should operate. And in fact, I've heard there's been a lot of hysteria today over the fact that anyone would dare signal that they were concerned about Speaker Johnson's leadership. But it strikes me that last episode we went through just ahead of Christmas was really instructive that Speaker Johnson has some work to do. He kind of let that whole thing grow out of control. And, it grew up to, 1,500-page continuing resolution. It was essentially an omnibus in sheep's clothing. There wasn't 72 hours to review it. Members of Congress had no idea what was even in it until it was pushed in front of them. It was a violation of all of the things that Speaker Johnson was presumably there to stop. So, in other words, I'm not opposed to rattling the guy's cage. I would have been annoyed if this thing stretched into Monday because you need to certify that presidential election. But giving him a couple of warning shots, that kind of seems reasonable.
Well, that's exactly what I was trying to do, and I think my colleagues were trying to do. But, I mean, don't forget, it wasn't just that he let that get out of hand. It's that violated the promises that he made and the rules that we enacted last time to run us, right?
Yeah.
So 72 hours to look at all of these things. And I would just say, Vince, we get that President Trump, he didn't want the drama. He wants it done. And that's fair. And we're with him. We're with him on the agenda. And he tells people all the time, Biggs, was with me from the beginning, which I was. But I will tell you this. I don't mean to bring it back to this, but his endorsement of Johnson was rather what I would call tepid, right? I mean, he said he's a hardworking Christian man. Well, you know who else is a hardworking Christian man? The guy that waits on you at in the restaurant that I go to eat, or a hardworking religious man. Yeah. They're everywhere. That's not really what I call a ringing endorsement. What we wanted to do was to make sure that the speaker understood he has to make systemic changes. But the structure itself has to change. But,
I do think I've been saying that Speaker Johnson does owe the fact that he is speaker again to President Trump, I think, because, it's a big deal that he did offer an endorsement. Maybe it comes across as tepid, but the news reports were, and you can speak to this more clearly, that President Trump himself was whipping votes, trying to call people to get them to support Speaker Johnson. That's a big step for him to take, and I would think Speaker Johnson would do well to remember the amount of effort President Trump put in on his behalf as he considers the extent to which he's going to pursue President Trump's agenda.
That's right. I mean, the bottom line is President Trump saved Mike. And that, don't get me wrong, I like Mike, and I want him to be successful, because if he is successful, the country will be successful. President Trump will be successful, the agenda will go forward. But President Trump saved him. President Trump owns him to a certain extent. Mike has got to perform, or else it will boomerang back on President Trump in a way. So, because President Trump said, "This is the guy. This is my guy," and he went all in on him. He pushed the chips to the middle of the table.
Yeah, and he needs him to be there now going forward.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Did you happen to receive a call from President Trump on this?
No, I didn't. So you have to understand the way this works is I didn't communicate with virtually anybody what I was going to do except for a few of my close friends here. And I happened to mention it to someone who's very, very close to President Trump. And I said, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm a pass on the first. I might be a pass on the second call, but I will vote for Mike Johnson in the well if I have to, because I want the agenda to go forward, which is why we've got a statement we put out, members of Freedom Caucus, because we believe in the agenda. We want it to go forward. And President Trump has said he wants Mike Johnson, but we want Mike Johnson to understand he has to make the changes to invigorate our conference to do what's necessary. Yes. And that's what we were all about there, Vince.
I was listening to some of the coverage on Fox today because I'd flipped on my TV to watch some of this go down. And some of the commentators there, people like Karl Rove and former Speaker Newt Gingrich, They were using language to describe the people who were holding out today as if they were psychopaths. They were saying that they need to see a psychiatrist. I don't know what they're doing. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. There's been a lot of people suggesting that this was just a vanity project, that the people who are even signaling any opposition here are just doing it to raise money. What do you make of those claims?
Well, that's about as nutty as you get. I mean, the reality is that all those guys should know better. For someone who doesn't watch this often, they might say that's just a little much. But the bottom line is, we got some structural changes. These are the same yo-yos, by the way, who were coming after us 2 years ago when we got massive, significant structural changes regarding Kevin McCarthy, and those structural changes lasted almost 9 months, and it changed the way business was done around here, and we were much more effective. And but then the uniparty gets in there, and those guys are kind of uniparty dogs, and they don't like to change. And the American people voted for change with Donald Trump, and we are basically trying to effectuate that change by making sure that the system gets reformed here. Otherwise, then you might as well just keep doing the same crap you're doing,
right?
Which is insanity. And so we're like, okay, we want to get this stuff done. We want to get it done right, and we want to get it done soon. And the way you do that is you're going to have to make structural changes. Otherwise, you're still controlled by K Street lobbyists. You're still controlled by the bureaucrats that have massive amounts of leverage and control over the body. And that's what we're trying to defeat.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so now that this is behind us, at least for now, Speaker Johnson is in place. Monday comes the traditional January 6th certification of the election. Can you give us a sense of how quickly you'll be able to move into some of these important legislative priorities, including these big packages, the reconciliation packages that need to be used as vehicles for President Trump's agenda?
Well, we need to be going already. This is part of my problem with our speaker. Is this should have been done on November 6th. We should have been starting on it myself. That's what I believe. So we've got a ways to go. These are really, like I say, these are complex, big issues. But you're going to see stuff coming out pretty quickly. I've already introduced. Today, I introduced more than 80 bills, largely dealing with these reconciliation issues, and we're trying to get them moving in the right direction. And the time for talk is done. Really, we need to be getting in the rooms and taking the language that's there and resolving them. So I would tell you, I wish we were going to have something ready on the 21st of January, the day after President Trump's sworn in. I don't believe that we're going to be there, but everybody's committed. Everybody's committed, but you got to take the sleeves off.
It's a big task.
By the way,
yeah,
it's a big task, and this is one of the reasons that I mean, good grief. One of the things that we simply ask for is, can we at least get on the Senate working schedule? They're working 5 days a week. The House is working 3.5 days a week. I mean, if you can't keep up with the geriatric Senate, for Pete's sakes, to me, it's just kind of some opportunities are getting burned.
But finally, Congressman Biggs, you mentioned it. You emphasized that these reconciliation packages. It seems to me, given how tight the margins are in both the House and the Senate, that these will be the primary vehicles to advance President Trump's legislative agenda.
100%. Yeah. So you're going to get some stuff around the edges that you might be able to get enough people in the Senate to vote for. You might get 60. But the big items, energy renewal, border, the tax package, the other economic drivers, all of those things are going to come in the form of these reconciliation bills. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's pedal to the metal, man. And it's time to quit talking and sit down in rooms and hash out language and get these issues resolved.
All right. Congressman Andy Biggs, thank you for joining us today. It was a very important day for you to join us. Glad you could do it. Thank you, sir. All right. To the phones we go. Alan calling in from Gambrills now, line 3. Hello, Alan. You're on the Vince Colonnade Show.
Hey, Vince. I do appreciate you taking my call, and I really I can't understate how much I appreciate that Congressman Biggs came on to extrapolate. But what I don't understand is, especially in the Republican, the caucus, as it were, and that's very generous. I don't recall in any of the discussions leading up to the votes today where Representative Massey, who was a stalwart opposition, why did he not put his name in the hat to be Speaker? I mean, I get the opposition and not thrilled with a lot of the things that the current Speaker and soon to be and now future Speaker did, but because the election of a Speaker is just that, it's an election.
Yeah.
Where is any kind of unity where the party can say, you know what, we don't like what Mike Johnson's doing. Here is what I'm going to do different. And, you know, I so respect that the congressman came on to talk about this, but this is nonsense.
Well,
I heard a discussion that came about in a previous show where, you know, I'm 30 years retired Navy and a former chief petty officer, and you know what? We threw things and we raised heck and we argued about things behind closed doors.
Yes.
But when we came out unified, and I don't understand why we are where we are, because the Freedom Caucus is now the dysfunction mechanism. I don't understand how this is so possible.
Well, I would say a couple pieces here. One is that obviously the guys who were involved with this effort, they never were trying to replace Mike Johnson with somebody else, because as you point out, there is no alternative. It's obvious that this was a vehicle for them to send a message. That's what this was. And if you're Mike Johnson, you've got to receive it. I mean, that's a shot across the bow. And there's people are upset with the Freedom Caucus for even raising a stink, but I'm upset with Congress for failing us, Alan. I'm upset that as an institution that it continues to pay us lip service and then screw us when push comes to shove. So in the midst of all of this, yes, Speaker Johnson, he's Speaker again. He got the vote. But I think the hysteria over how it took place is overwrought, because in the end, these guys sent a message. It's a message I agree with. It sounds like it's a message you agree with, Alan. You just don't like their style that they did it in this public way, which is, hey, you've got to actually do your jobs. You've got to actually cut spending. You actually have to fight for the rest of us. You can't just be doing these behind closed doors deals that screw us in the end. And so however that message needs to be sent, including publicly, if that makes them uncomfortable, I'm fine with it. And now on to certifying the presidential election come Monday. That's the next step. It's an amazing place, Washington, D.C. It deserves a few more rolled up newspapers to the nose, that's for sure. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. A lot going on in Congress today as Speaker Mike Johnson reassumes that role, but again, by the skin of his teeth. Joining us on the phone right now to discuss that and so much more, Congressman Scott Perry. He's an Army combat veteran, and he represents Pennsylvania's 10th Congressional District. Sir, good to have you back with us.
Great to be with you, Vince. And the day probably went like a lot of us expected, a little bit of turmoil, but ended kind of predictably, I think.
Yeah. So if you had to summarize what took place today and whether it served the public's interest, how do you assess it?
Well, I think that like I said, it was predictable because, look, obviously we're facing the certification of the last presidential election, so that adds a different dimension. The speaker had the endorsement of the president, who's very popular, but obviously we have a narrow majority where he could lose only one, and that one had been listed for a long time. But that doesn't mean, look, we don't have coronations in the United States of America, right? So Speaker's got to earn it. And I would just, I know you got a great listenership because I listen whenever I'm in town. There's a lot of people listening. And there's probably a lot of people saying, why can't Republicans get their act together and just go along with this stuff? Well, I would just say for those who are skeptical, and I'm a guy that voted for Johnson reluctantly, but I can't tell you that Johnson's speakership so far has been there's been no difference from a McCarthy speakership or a Paul Ryan speakership or a John Boehner speakership. And I think that the American people demand change. Like, they're sick of the status quo.
Yes.
And quite honestly, in talks with Mike Johnson, who's a very nice guy, he's a friend of mine, but he would not commit to making any structural changes. Well, what are we talking about here? I mean, we had a huge election where we said we want the direction of the country to change, and we can't even get a commitment on, because the swamp always wins around here. I don't know I know you've noticed, Vince, because I listen to you. The swamp always wins. And regular average working citizens who get up early in the morning, they pay their taxes, they go to work, they abide by the rules. They're constantly getting, they're getting the short end of the deal here. And it seems like, Washington always gets what it wants. And there's a lot of us that demand that changes.
Yeah, man, and you're right. You shouldn't act like every other speaker. You should distinguish yourself. That's what the American people want. So he has a real opportunity here, given that privilege again. Speaking of the swamp always getting what it wants, Liz Cheney this week was awarded a presidential medal by Joe Biden. I'm not clear on why. Here she is getting this award.
Elizabeth L. Cheney, for putting the American people over party.
All right, so she gets a big medal, the Presidential Citizens Medal from Joe Biden. Congressman Scott Perry, why did Liz Cheney get a medal from Joe Biden?
She got a medal because she denounced her party and she denounced the president, who they hate, and she lied to try and ensure that he would go to jail in keeping with the Democrat Party principles that they hate President Trump, they hate everything he stands for, they hate the people that support President Trump, and they hate anybody that's ever spoken to President Trump. And so that's why she got the medal. Look, it's kind of like, the Pulitzer Prize that the New York Times got for lying about the terror famine in Ukraine when Russia did that. It's like when Obama got, what did Obama get? He got the Nobel Peace Prize. It's what the left always does. They make everything that one time had value worth nothing. That's what that is.
They're diminishing. Yeah, they're devaluing the currency. And it really is kind of goes back to your bigger point about Washington and the way the swamp operates. Liz Cheney was the third highest Republican in the House. She was a part of the Republican leadership in the House. And now she's taking awards from Biden for politicizing the work of the House?
Yeah, and the next question is unless she gets a pardon, will she get a felony? Will she be charged and convicted of a felony for the same thing that she just got a prize for?
Right, just like tampering with everything and meddling with the evidence that she gathered and not being forthcoming with the American people?
Tampering with the evidence, witness tampering, lying under oath, all those kind of things have consequences. And we'll see if she's going to be held to account. But again, this is one of the reasons that the American people have reduced faith in our systems of governance and government and the parties themselves. I mean, people are fed up with this kind of stuff, and it's naked in your face. It's and like I said, the Democrats make everything that was once worthy worth nothing.
Yeah, that's quite unfortunate, and it's true. Congressman Scott Perry, thank you very much for your time today. I know you're busy, so I'm grateful that you spent some with us.
Well, great to be with you, Vince. Thank you so much. God bless you. Stay safe out there. I know we're headed for some rough weather, and especially in Washington, D.C. We're rugged Pennsylvanians, but Washington, D.C., it's a little scary when we hear there's going to be like a foot of snow on the ground on the day that we have to certify the presidential election. So
yes, your constitutional obligation should outpace whatever concern you have about snowflakes. I hope so. Anyway.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
All right, Congressman, thank you very much.
Thank you. Awesome.
There he is. All right, Congressman Scott Perry from Pennsylvania. They've got a lot of business today going on in the House, so an abbreviated conversation, but we'll have him back again soon. And he's right. We're all keeping an eye on some of the snow. We have snow already today in our area. Some snow, but all of the chatter, conversation, concern you've by now heard. That Sunday night going into Monday and perhaps even into Tuesday. The forecast shifts by the hour. It's tough for these meteorologists. They're all over the place, let's be honest, as they try to assess what's going to happen. How much are we going to get? And I was talking to a great business owner today who said to me, he's like, you ever notice that with these forecasts, like they have trouble telling you a week in advance what's going to happen? How do they know the climate's going to change in 100 years? So it's a good point. It is an excellent point. We have difficulty forecasting a week ahead. Forget 100 years from now. AOC screws it all up. Doesn't matter what it is. Let's see here. I've got Chris calling in from Gainesville now on line 1. Chris, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, Vince. Just a couple points regarding Johnson. I don't know why everybody's so surprised about the CR. He was going to oppose Ukraine aid, and at the last minute he caved, and so the last round of Ukraine aid he approved, and we have veterans sleeping in the street, yet he approves aid to Ukraine, so there's that.
Right.
My other comment is on immigration. In the last few weeks since the election, all the talk on immigration on talk radio and Fox News is, from this guy Honan, is about going after the felons. There's virtually no more talk about getting rid of everybody else, which makes up 99% of all the people that came in here, the 11 million. Maybe 500,000 are felons at the most. What about the other 10.5 million? So the next time you speak to...
Well, has Tom Homan, to your knowledge, ruled out deporting people who are not criminal felons?
No, but he never talks about it. So, I mean, I would think he'd be talking that up. But everybody knows we all have a soft spot, or the liberals have a soft spot over getting rid of people who are just coming here to improve their lives. Those people are lowering my wages. And if we sent them home, I could make double what I'm making.
Right.
It's a foreign labor that's killing our wages, among other things. I work in an Amazon data center, and the wages are really low because there's so much foreign labor.
Right.
So,
well, I get your concern, but Tom Homan has the only thing Tom Homan has said on this subject. Well, he said a lot on this subject, actually, but one of the things that he's been emphasizing is that the easiest and most obvious thing to do is to begin by triaging this and prioritizing the most violent people as you begin these deportations. Many of them are already in contact with the criminal justice system, so it makes it even easier to identify the people that you can deport first and foremost. My suspicion is that you would agree that makes sense to prioritize that.
Well, I think we can multitask, but the other thing too is you might want to ask Trump or Vance. Are they going to pledge to get rid of chain migration or political asylum?
Right.
Are they going to build a 2,000-mile wall? There's a whole bunch of things they need to be.
There's a couple pieces. So. Trump wants to end birthright citizenship. To your point. So this idea that we can just have anchor babies, that people just come across, like China did this for years. Birthright citizenship tourism, where they'd have Chinese foreign nationals come into the country for a fee, and then they have a baby here, and then they become U.S. citizens. That's preposterous. That's in no way what the Constitution was intended to be used for, and yet that's the way it is being used. To your point about chain migration, that I agree with you. It's kind of a senseless. It is a senseless system because any immigration system that functions in a country like ours should be merit-based. Should be, what do you add to the country? What deal can we arrange where we both mutually benefit from it, rather than a full-blown free-for-all? And it makes sense, if you're an American citizen, you want to bring your wife in, that's one thing, but it's quite another to have an endless litany of chain migration. And then finally, on you mentioned a 2,000-mile border wall. President Trump has addressed this in a variety of ways in the past, but one thing that he's emphasized, which is true, is that not the entire southern border is not navigable. There are huge sections of the southern border that cannot be crossed by humans naturally. So it would be a waste of both time and especially money to build wall on some of that. But much of it, absolutely, we could use more wall, because a wall is a durable way to prevent illegal migration that can't be overturned merely by executive order by somebody else who doesn't have America's best interest at heart.
And actually, you and I share a pet peeve. I don't know how many other people agree with this, but are the Republicans finally going to get rid of BLM Plaza? They have all three branches of government, and we're finally going to get rid of that atrocity.
I know. Isn't it crazy?
Really
I feel like I'm screaming into the wind sometimes when I say it. It's like it's crazy. They have, well, we share that. Thank you. I really appreciate the call. Thank you.
Okay.
That's Chris in Gainesville. Chris with a bunch of good priorities. To Chris's point, I give Tom Homan a wider berth, I think, perhaps than Chris does. Chris is concerned that Homan isn't talking enough about mass deportations of nonviolent illegals. But I think Tom Homan is going to be a complete breath of fresh air on this subject. And I can't wait to see what he does with the role, because this is completely out of control, right now. And Homan is, I think, the right guy for it. I hope I'm right about that. And President Trump definitely thinks he's the right guy for it. And I hope he's right about that, too. That's a big deal. David is calling in now from Georgia, the Peach State, on line 3. Hello, David. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, love the show. I'll keep it short and sweet. Mr. Perry should get the WMAL app so that when he's out of town, he can listen like I do in Georgia. And second, Mr. Johnson had to work harder for the speakership than Kamala did for the nomination of the Democrat Party. Like Elon says, let that sink in.
That's pretty funny. I like that. That is true. That's why I like it so much. Mike Johnson has had to work harder to be speaker than Kamala Harris had to work to become the nominee. No question whatsoever about that, David. Thank you very much. Yeah, and David points out something very important, which is you can take us anywhere. The WMAL app is God's gift to iPhones and Androids. It is the single greatest app ever devised because it delivers to you the voices of my fine colleagues here on WMAL anywhere you are on the planet, which is wonderful. And thanks to Elon Musk's satellite system, you can, I think, get us literally anywhere. I think that's possible. At least I hope so anyway. Also, the podcast, I can't emphasize it enough because I almost never emphasize it. So here I am emphasizing it. The Vince Coglianese Show podcast, please, please, please subscribe there. Sign up for it. It's a great way to get all the interviews that you've missed, all the content that you haven't been able to pick up yet. If you want to listen to it at some other time, we all have busy schedules. You know where I have been listening to a lot of stuff? The gym. I go to the gym. I'll listen to the Chris Plant Show. I'll get one of these podcasts going. It's great. So if your body's occupied with something else, your mind can be occupied with WMAL, which is awesome. Isn't that great? You know, President Trump is definitely one of a kind. There's no question about that. You should listen to this. His statement today announcing that Morgan Ortagus is receiving a job in the Trump administration. You know Morgan Ortagus. She's been on with us before. She's been on WMAL, I think, many times. She is the founder of Polaris National Security. And she also previously served in the government. She was a spokeswoman at the Department of State from 2019 until 2021. She was also a member of the Abraham Accords team for President Trump. But what's interesting is the statement that President Trump just put out about her new job, which had me laughing. Statement from President Donald J. Trump, official. I am pleased to announce Morgan Ortagus as Deputy Special Presidential Envoy for Middle East Peace to the Honorable Stephen Witkoff. Early on, Morgan fought me for 3 years, but hopefully has learned her lesson. These things usually don't work out, but she has strong Republican support. And I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing it for them. Let's see what happens. She will hopefully be an asset to Steve, a great leader and talent, as we seek to bring calm and prosperity to a very troubled region. I expect great results, and soon, exclamation mark. It continues. Morgan Ortagus has had experience in diplomacy and national security and is an active U.S. Navy Reserve intelligence officer. From 2019 to 2021, Morgan served as spokesperson at the Department of State. And then he writes in parentheses, Pompeo, ! As if, just in case you were wondering who Secretary of State was back then. Where she was a member of my historic Abraham Accords team that brought unprecedented peace to the Middle East. Earlier, she worked at the Department of the Treasury as a financial intelligence analyst, and from 2010 to 2011 was the deputy U.S. Treasury attaché to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Good luck, Morgan! ! Never in my life, never before and never again will I see presidential statements that look and sound like that. That's really funny. Now, if I'm Morgan Ortagus today, I'm doing two things. One, I'm committing to live up to President Trump's expectations of being a huge success in the role, obviously. Two, I'm printing this statement out, I'm framing it, and I'm hanging it in my house. That'll be the talk of every dinner party for the rest of her life. Remember when President Trump issued a statement that says he's appointing me to a job, but it's probably not going to work out? Oh, I can't even get over how funny that is. That is so fantastic. That is so fantastic. He's definitely doing things differently. He's Corey, are you going to that big rally that President Trump is holding? You are going? Did you get a ticket to it? You have a ticket. Oh, okay. So President Trump's holding a rally at the Capital One Arena the day before the inauguration, which is talk about unconventional, right? The normal inauguration thing is you're supposed to just go to inauguration balls and basically avoid the general public and only hang out with rich donors and, basically plot your administration in a way that advantages all of them. But instead, President Trump is doing a massive rally at the Capital One Arena with everyday Americans who want to go see the president ahead of his inauguration. Isn't that cool? That's pretty cool. You're going to have a good time. That's really neat. Man, oh, man. All right, so we'll see what happens. We've got a Trump administration coming now in just 17 days. And President Trump is very excited for all the people who are going to work in the government. Morgan Ortagus, he's suspicious of, though. He's concerned that she's not going to be a huge success. You know, these things don't always work out, but he's really hoping. Good luck, Morgan! ! Never in my life. Up next here on WMAL, there's a show produced by the great one, Mark Levin, here on this great station.